all men cheat.
All men cheat, baby. Sprinkle, sprinkle.
Men will cheat.
Yeah. Oh, look at these two. All right, come on. You're okay? Oh, what? Either they're having an affair or they're just very shy. I'm not quite sure.
Forgiveness is a big thing. So if you have ever had a trust issue come up, you've got to learn how to forgive and work through that. Otherwise, that'll just turn into crippling insecurity that you suffer with.
Depends what the trust issue was. If the person is like texting other people.
Yeah, well, there's different like degrees of severity for sure. But yeah, I think a lot of issues can be boiled down.
Do all men cheat? After the whole wizard list incident, this seems to be a very trending topic. Everybody's asking this, especially women all over the world are like, if this happened to Liz, does this mean? Or a bunch of YouTubers are also making content regarding this, and some of them are downright saying that yes, they all do, and you should just expect them to do so and just like comply basically, or just get other things out of them like resources and accept that this will be the case.
Another thing I learned from rich, successful, smart people, especially women, especially about dating, is this: all men cheat. It doesn't matter if they're ugly, good looking, rich, poor, young, old, they all do it.
So you guys may not know this about me, but for the past 3 years or so, I have been working with men. I have had hundreds of personal consultations with them regarding relationships. I've also been researching lots in order to prepare myself for this about the male psyche, the male drive, and many other things that could help me help them. So I firmly believe that this is going to be the most complete video, the most non-biased, complete direct truth video that you're going to get on this topic. However, it is going to get uncomfortable here. So if you're someone who gets offended easily or who would rather believe in fairy tales rather than the real world, this is probably not the video for you as of now. But I am the kind of person who would much rather face the harsh truth and who believes that the truth will set you free at the end of the day than to just be here believing in La La Land. I think we can make way better decisions like this. I'm also going to be generalizing here because it's absolutely impossible to talk about every single human being in this world, right? I have not met every man out there. I have not met every woman out there. So I'm going to be generalizing on most heterosexual women and most heterosexual men. So if you're an exception, congratulations, good for you. But the majority of us don't fall within there. Finally, I gotta give all these spoilers because, man, people get so easily offended nowadays and people can't even respect, opinions or different facts that don't serve them. So I literally gotta say all this, and even then I'm sure that it's gonna be people like crying in the comments. But one last thing I want to say is that at no point am I going to be excusing male infidelity or anybody's infidelity for that matter. I do think infidelity is a serious thing, and I think it can be potentially traumatic to people. I mean, it's literally been studied that it can cause PTSD on people who have suffered it. So when I'm explaining these things or when I'm pointing out different scenarios, I'm not out here saying like, oh, it's all good, like it's fine for them to do that. Not at all the case. So if you're ready to hear the harsh, uncomfortable truth that will set you free, ultimately, join me. Okay guys, so as human beings, I really believe that we have a hardware, our biology, and we also have a software, which is more so cultural or social. Lots of things that are part of our hardware, our biology, people think nowadays that they're just social or they're cultural, but not really. They're actually pretty much ingrained in our DNA. And we're gonna see a lot of them today that many people are gonna be like, oh, well, it's not true, like it's just social. But no, it's a real thing. So starting from that base, men and women, we are biologically very different. I mean, just the very obvious things is that we as women can only get pregnant once a year, once every 9-10 months, once a year really, while they could father children, daily or even multiple times a day if they had to. Not only that, but we as women can only get pregnant once a month. Like a few days within every month is when we have that window of potential fertility, unlike them, that they can do it again at any moment pretty much. Of course, there are peaks of testosterone and better moments to do so, but it's definitely nowhere as restricted as women's biology. Also, women, we do have a biological clock. This is not social, this is not cultural. Yes, there are plenty of women who have kids, into their 40s and even later, but it's quite unusual, and we are more fertile before that age. And there is a certain age where most women just will not be able to have kids anymore. Not the case for men either. So you're getting the idea here that we're really just programmed to be a lot more selective and not so much to spread our seed. We don't have that ingrained in us the same way. We also have way lower degrees of testosterone compared to men, and every woman who ovulates, and if you're on the pill, you're not ovulating, that's a whole different topic, but if you're off the pill and you have ovulated, you notice that you feel different on testosterone. libido-wise and everything else. So that is yet another factor that points to their sexuality just being very biologically different from ours. And the way it works is that if one gender is more selective, then the other one cannot be as selective, right? It makes absolutely no sense for nature, for our species to reproduce, for both of them to be extremely selective, because then we will never reproduce. If men were just as selective as women, we would reproduce way less than we actually do. So as a result, they're way less selective than we are when it comes to being attracted to someone in order to have a casual encounter with them, because the cost that they pay is just way lower. If we were to get pregnant, and I'm not even talking nowadays, with social aids and with abortion clinics and with all the things that you can do, birth control, this and that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about our primitive being, which is still completely ingrained in our DNA because we haven't evolved that far yet to match our current technology. If we were to fall pregnant, it would be a lot more pricey on us per se. We're literally discapacitated for a whole year. We cannot do a thing for a year, and honestly way more than that, because now we have a small little child that depends on us. We can't be out there hunting and providing all these things. So that makes us extremely more selective than they are. And again, if one of us is selective, that means the other one cannot be as selective, because otherwise we would not get anywhere. So these are just some of the bases, they're way less selective when it comes to being attracted to women. They're just way more attracted to a larger variety of women than we are to men. And this is something that you can yourself easily check. I mean, if you have a male friend or a brother or even your boyfriend, if you're comfortable, you can go sit somewhere and ask him how many girls he finds attractive. I guarantee you he'll find way more than you find men. This is not to say that women are these extremely monogamous beings and that we only like one man forever. It's not the case. I mean, everybody knows that, but we're definitely just wired very differently than they are. In fact, human beings in general, we're not fully monogamous, but we're also not fully polygamous. But that's a whole different topic. Their attraction is also a lot more instinctual, right? They'll see someone that they find attractive, and they would be willing, if he had her consent and all that, to have something with her, to have a casual encounter with her if she was willing to do so. For us, that only takes place when we find the guy extremely attractive, and there are very few men who fall into that. Most men have to have a little bit more than just looks going for them. They have to charm us. They have to just have a lot more than we just see them on the street and being like, I want to be with him. I mean, that's literally a very small percentage of guys. He would have to look like Brad Pitt for your average woman to be like, yeah, I'll sleep with him tonight. Not the case for the other way around. This also explains why a lot of guys will jump into the opportunity to sleep with girls that they're not even that interested in, more so than the sexual part. I'm not saying this is right. I actually think it's an awful thing to do, but it is something that takes place because of that, because they're okay with doing that. Whereas for us, we would have to like the guy in general in order to sleep with him. I mean, yeah, maybe we like him physically, but there's gotta be a bit more, unless he looks like Brad Pitt, but most guys are not there. And as a result, because they find so many women sexually attractive, and because they're just way less selective in general, and because they have way less to lose, and because of social and cultural things, of course, that we'll get into in a moment, they're just way more comfortable with the idea of no strings attached casual sex. I mean, most women, if they sleep with a guy that they like, and then the next day he doesn't call them back, or he just literally never calls them, most women would feel used. This is also because, again, our biology is telling us to be selective. Our biology is telling us to only do this for someone that would stick around for us in the case that we do fall pregnant. And it's also because we release very different hormones after an encounter than they do, completely different ones, especially in casual scenarios. This has also been proven by the Coolidge effect. The Coolidge effect shows that men's sexual drive is driven by novelty and variety. And this has literally been studied not just in animals, but in male humans, that they are essentially way more interested in newer partners than they are in someone that they have been with for quite a while. And to be honest, this does extend towards women as well. Novelty is just an attractive thing to humans in general, not just in relationships, with absolutely everything. But in the sexual realm, it is way more of a driving force for men. This is why most men's sexual fantasy always includes a harem, lots of various different beautiful women. They just like the different, the new. Doesn't mean that one is better necessarily, but they're just different. It's not quite the same for us. We don't really have these crazy, I want to be with a ginger man and a black guy and a blonde guy and this and that. I'll have them all. I mean, some women might, but it doesn't really typically tend to be our fantasy. We fantasize more so with, the top guy, like the king or the surgeon or whatever, the mob guy, the mob leader, whatever it is. And this actually has been studied as well. It has been shown that women's sexual fantasies usually include surgeons, mob leaders, like mafia bosses, vampires, werewolves, these kind of dominant, somewhat dark, but top guys, and not so much a variety of very different looking and newer men. Therefore, sorry to break this to you, but there is no such thing as a man who's so in love with you that he only has eyes for you. I mean, sure, maybe at the beginning, when the hormones are super strong and the lust The lust is super strong. Yeah, he might feel somewhat that way, but he's not even like in love with you at that point. He's in lust with you. If you find a man who has, values and integrity, then of course he would prioritize your relationship and not hurting you over any temporary pleasure that he would get with some random woman. But that doesn't mean that his drive, his instinct, and his desire to be with that random woman has gone away. These things are not only super obvious when you talk to men and when you hear them and when you hear the things that they say between them. They're not only, or even if you read Reddit posts that are just between them, you get to see these kind of encounters. But they've also been shown in polls. Men have been polled things like, are you happy with the amount of sexual partners that you have? And like 90% of them said no, regardless of how many they have been with. Like regardless if they have been with 5 women or 100 women, they always wanted more. Not the same with women. Women have been polled similar things and they're often okay with the amount of partners they've had, even if they had few compared to their male counterparts. It's also obvious in today's culture. I mean, you don't even have to dig that far. Have you seen how much money these OF girls and Instagram thoughts and all these people are making? I mean, it's amazing. It's ridiculous. And not just them, but sex workers in general have always made quite a bit of money. And most men are not just paying to be with one of them or to watch one of them on OF, but rather to watch many of them, to have that variety and the novelty. This is also fairly obvious because those men who are able to get away with this, traditionally kings or men or extremely high status, men who could do absolutely everything and everybody had to comply. I'm not saying this is right, keep that in mind. I'm just saying it was the way things were. And things are still like that in many parts of the world today, or even with many high status men today. These kind of men, they're rarely, not to say never, monogamous. They always have either the wife or the wives and then a bunch of lovers and like a whole harem and concubines and this and that. So when you do see that the men that can do absolutely everything they want, go that route, it does point a finger at everything that I'm saying. And here's the thing, because men who do these casual encounters often don't do them because they're particularly interested in the person. Like they don't really value her in any way more so than just sexually, physically, or just pure pleasure. When they say that when they cheated on their wives or their girlfriends, it had nothing to do with them and they still loved them, they just wanted that variety or they had that opportunity, they probably are saying the truth. This doesn't mean you should accept that at all, and we'll get there in a second because that's not at all what I'm saying. And this doesn't even mean this is the kind of man that you should be in a relationship with to begin with, unless you choose to. It's your right, because likely he's just too undisciplined or doesn't even respect the relationship all that much. But there could be some truth in what he's saying. Another thing that plays a role as well is the fact that we were saying we as women are way more selective when it comes to casual encounters. We don't just really tend to be like, oh yeah, I'll have sex with. We usually have to like that person, or we have to feel like we're getting something in return from him. It's way deeper than that, right? So as a result, men just have way fewer opportunities to get these kind of encounters than we do. I mean, most of us could just walk out there or sign up on Tinder tonight and we could have, a whole group of men to choose from if we wanted to. Not the case for most men, for sure, unless they're like, super famous or handsome or whatever. So what does this mean? That many men, when they do have that opportunity, because it's so rare for them, your average man, it's so rare for him to have that opportunity to do that, many men will take it because he's like, when else am I going to get this opportunity? Probably not for a while, if ever. Not the same for us women. If we get the opportunity, it's like, well, I mean, I could have it tonight as well. Like, is it even that unusual or special? Probably not. There's also the Madonna whore complex, which I do believe that most men have to an extent, which basically states that most men do have this thing where they separate women into two categories. The more pure woman that they would take seriously for a relationship, I mean, we all know this, and maybe have a family with and maybe marry, but he won't have the same lustful desire for. And then the whores, right? The women that he would have casual encounters with, he wouldn't take seriously, he wouldn't love them, but his desire would be a lot stronger for them. So all this reasoning, I mean, when we're putting all these things together, it does explain why their brain is wired like that, why they do the things that they do. Does it excuse it? I have to repeat this a bunch of times because I see you all coming. It does not excuse it, because we're gonna get there, but we're not just animals. We're not just driven by our hardwire. We're not just here like a dog. My dog is in the background. I don't know if you can see her. Okay, no, she's lying down. But we're not just like a dog. So we can't be here like many of them are, like, oh well, I'm a man. I'm programmed to spread my seed and all these things that I just listed. These things are real, but we also have a brain. We also have the capacity to discern, to make decisions, and to abstain from things, to have self-control if we want to. So those are more the biological things. Those are more the hardware. But now let's get into the cultural and social components, because they're just as real. To begin with, historically, men were rarely expected to be sexually faithful. Even the ones that were not like super wealthy or super top tier, it just wasn't really expected of them. The deal was more so that men would provide, provision, protection, etc., and then the women would provide sexual exclusivity in children because there were no DNA tests. And the only way for him to know that she was being faithful and that that child was thus his was if she wasn't being with anyone else. So I would even argue, I mean, in many parts of the world, like in Latin America or even in Eastern Europe or, you know, in rural towns all over the world, it's not even expected for them to be that monogamous. And you'll still hear like older women being like, oh, well, you know, men will be men. But I would argue that in most of the countries where we live, most of the Western world, it's not really like that anymore. Things have really changed and no one's like, oh, men will be men. I'll let my boyfriend do whatever. I mean, some women, sure. Oftentimes women who are like, you know, super provided by these men, they probably don't even care about them much more than what they provide for them. But it's definitely not a typical response anymore. So I would even argue in the Western world today, it's like probably the first time that we actually expect that from them. But it's also the first time that, you know, women are being independent and working and have equal rights and all these other things that of course play a role. So the old deal is kind of broken, you know, because we no longer expect them to provide and we can do so for ourselves most of the time. They also no longer have that leverage over us regarding sexual exclusivity. But yeah, what do we do with all this information? You know, do we just let them do whatever? Of course, you can do whatever you want. You can not be in a relationship, you know, be in an open relationship, be in an open have like whatever it is, it's your life, you do whatever you want. I don't really recommend most of these strange arrangements, but you're free to do so. And we do know that in many parts of the world, or even traditionally, when women have been provided for, they often just turn a blind eye. You know, they're like, as long as he's giving me the security and giving me the love and the protection and not humiliating me like that astronomer CEO did with his wife, whose wife, by the way, I'm sure she knew this the whole time. Many of them are just like, you know what, like he can do whatever, I'll just be here at my mansion with my kids. And most of these women are not even like that involved with that man to begin with. But given the fact of what I was saying before, that most men don't really have the opportunity for cheating or casual sex the same way that women do, it does beg the question, if those who are always saying like, oh, I'm so faithful, baby, like I would never do anything to you, I would never treat you wrong, I would never cheat on you, if they're really saying that because that's the way they are, like that's the way their character and their values are, or just because they know that they don't really have a choice anyway. So sometimes I think that women that have very attractive men who already like did the whole sowing of their oats or whatever it is, do have an advantage there, because that man is already like, babe, I could be with anyone and yet I choose you. But then again, I also think that if a man really wanted to do so, if he really wanted to cheat, he could always like hire somebody. So at the end of the day, they always do have that choice. Same as women, really. Which brings me back to the whole, it's a choice, it's a decision. It's not your hardwiring, it's not your programming, it's not like I'm a man and this and that. No, it's always a choice. Regarding what do we do with this information, just keep in mind that it's not really the 1950s or the 1850s or whatever it is anymore. In most of the countries that we live in, it is pretty looked down upon to cheat on your spouse, regardless of your gender. And most women are financially independent, so they can just leave. There's really nothing tying them back to this if they wanted to do so. And when it comes to statistics, most divorces in the Western world are initiated by women, like by large. Most divorces are not even related to infidelity, and most men do not even leave their wives for the mistresses in the case that they do have one to begin with. So as much as, you know, this is all like so popularized in popular culture and we're all talking about it right now because of Liz and the astronomer CEO and celebrity this and that, it's actually nowhere as common as we think it is, at least not to this degree of, you know, wow, he did this and that. But of course it is still reasonably a real concern, because STDs, getting your heart broken, you know, shared assets, kids, all these things that can be completely damaged if that person does decide to fuck around and hurt you. Or my favorite, like worst case scenario that I would say it's like, you know, most women's like deep down fear is that, say you like invest your youth and you know, help a man and you're like the woman of the process is how they call it in Spanish. I don't know in English, but the woman that's just there, you know, like fighting by his side when he has absolutely nothing. You invest your youth and your best years and your beauty and this and that, and you even, you know, risk your life to give him kids. And then when he's up here, he just like cheats on you or dumps you for someone younger. That's like everyone's, you know, worst case scenario. So of course, as much as we're like, oh, statistically this and that, these things are real concerns that still haunt a lot of women. So now that we've set the stage for this whole like disastrous thing, you know, I told you what their biology is like, what the cultural and social things are like, all the things that can happen to you as a woman, the way you would feel as a woman, potential solutions. Because there are some, believe it or not. First thing I would say, to chill out that fear by remembering that, once again, it's not even that statistically common. 2, you will survive if it does happen to you. You will not die. You will be okay. It will feel like you're dying maybe, but you will not die. And then again, it's good also to remember, like, will it hurt you, or will it hurt you because you think it has to hurt you? You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, most of the time, you didn't even see it. It had nothing to do with you. Like, it's just something that would hurt you because you have believed this narrative that it should hurt you, and it kind of hurts your ego more so at the end of the day. That's not to say that you should stay with that person because they clearly made that choice to hurt you. But you can also decide yourself to not get hurt by that person's actions who didn't care about you in the first place. Also, high self-esteem. Like, do you believe yourself to be so worthy of love and respect that you will only stand for that? Or do you believe yourself to be so worthless that you will literally take anything that comes your way? Because you're like, oh, well, you know, I don't deserve anymore. This is all I can do, so let me just stick around with this. And do you believe that you're an attractive enough partner that in case that things do go wrong, you can go and find someone else? Do you value yourself enough to keep yourself attractive even within a relationship and not just to attract someone? Which is something that some people do, and to me is like, wow, like, do you really value yourself that little that you only take care of yourself to attract someone else, not for yourself? And also, are you gonna give the relationship like all you have? You know, are you gonna treat that man with respect and make him feel like a man and not constantly be like belittling him, making him feel like he's not good enough and this and that? Because if you do act that way, if you just completely let yourself go and then you have like no respect for him and you don't even want to have intimacy with him, and he does go out there and like step out on you or whatever, I mean, I'm not saying it's your fault. Like, I'm not saying it's like, oh, you caused this or whatever, but at the end of the day, he should have just left to begin with. But you did have some responsibility in there. I don't care how offensive that is to people nowadays. Like, people just want to live in like la la lands and think they have no responsibility for their lives and play like victim when things go wrong. But I think it's much better to accept that you do have responsibility for some things. Is it your fault fully? No, he should have just left. He should have been like, I'm not putting up with this before he did that to you. Doesn't change the fact that you could have also done things differently. And that takes me to my next point, which is pick a good partner. Some profiles of men, people in general, honestly, do cheat more. Usually more affluent, higher status men do it more because they feel like they can get away with it more. They also have more opportunity. So it's just really about examining patterns and, you know, taking a look at that person's like integrity and their behavior and what they're like. And it's coming back to the whole responsibility thing. Because say if you're dating like a SoundCloud rapper who's always rapping about like banging hoes and follows a bunch of OF girls on Instagram and has a bunch of female friends, and you had to chase him to get him into a relationship, and then when he gets the opportunity, he steps out because he's a sleazebag and he was always gonna do it. Yeah, he's still a sleazebag, he's still a scumbag, it's still his fault. But damn, didn't you have some responsibility in choosing that kind of a person to begin with? Like, why did you even expect that guy, just based on patterns, was going to be the best partner to begin with? Like, he wasn't probably even ready to be in a relationship. And I don't even know why this is like so offensive to women nowadays. Like, I really don't know why. I really don't know why some women would just so much rather be like not empowered at all, be in this like victim mindset instead of actually taking things as they are. Like, if you leave your car open in a very dangerous neighborhood and then someone robs it, I mean, I'm not saying like, you know, good for you, the good that happened, but like, you had some responsibility. Just accept it, empower yourself, and actually make good decisions for the future. So yeah, I'm not saying like pick a loser that nobody wants, because trust me, that loser, the moment he does have an opportunity, he will take it and he will step out. But do prioritize some things in that man. And if you have some suggestions for things that you should prioritize when choosing a guy, when it comes to like, you know, loyalty and everything else, then put them in the comments. But here are my personal favorites. First of all, integrity, like someone that has shown you that he has integrity, not just with you, but with himself and with other people. Someone that has shown you that he wants you from the beginning. You haven't chased them into a relationship. You haven't chased them to marry you. You haven't done any of this. He literally has chosen you, picked you, gone after you, and has shown you that he is ready for a commitment instead of you forcing him into it. That never works out. And if it does, it's never the way the woman wants it to. And these kind of behaviors do often come with age in men and, you know, maturity, but not always. More signs is that he sees you as like his woman and wants to provide for you and wants you all to have a better life. And it's not just like a party boy who's always looking for external validation on social media. That's such a red flag for both genders, to be honest. He has no female friends nor beliefs in these female friends. I mean, some exceptions can be made, but for the most part, if your man just comes home one day, he's like, oh babe, like I have this new female friend. Like, no. He has no corn addiction. What are his friends like? Like, are they very much the opposite of what we're saying? Because birds of the same flock do fly together. What are his parents and his dad and his brothers like? And does he firmly believe, like, does he say these things, you know, like, yeah, of course I'm attracted to other women, whatever, but I would not throw away what we have over some temporary moment with some random person. Also, detachment. I feel like that's such a good solution to everything we fear losing in life, whether it's like a partner, a friend, like money. You do have to realize that everything in this world is temporary. Even if you literally like live with someone until the very end, at some point you're going to separate. So everything is temporary. Nothing is really yours at the end of the day, as harsh as that sounds. I told you this video is gonna make you uncomfortable, but isn't it better to just accept these things? So give yourself all that energy that you spend, you know, like debating, like, is this person gonna do this, and like suffering about all this. Like, just spend all that energy on you and bettering yourself, and realize that this is not Disney, this is real life. And our male partners, they will never give you everything, and same way we cannot give them everything, you know. And we just have to compartmentalize and expect some things from them, expect some things from our family members, expect some things from ourselves, from our friends, from our coworkers, whatever it is. And at the end of the day, like, that's the biggest solution, really. And that's what's so paradoxical about all of this, that when you're your best version, growing alive and reinventing yourself through different things all the time, like growing and evolving and becoming better because you love yourself and life all that much, and you're not spending all this energy like controlling him and like seeing what he's doing and seeing, you know, this and that and being obsessed with him. At that point, not only are you at your absolute happiest and just like your highest self and your highest version and you're glowing, but you're also way less likely to get cheated on. So I do think that's the ultimate solution.